So, Chris, this week, AGI was officially achieved when it comes to AI music creation. Everyone, and I mean everyone, has been talking about Udio, Udio.com. It's the most realistic music maker we've ever seen. It makes Suno, which we covered 2 weeks ago on the show and have a few times now, seem honestly like GPT-3.
Why do they even bother?
Yeah.
Like, give up, guys. You've been beaten.
You've got to feel sorry for Suno in a way because they, listeners will remember we actually were able to make a pretty realistic or fairly realistic sounding Taylor Swift song called Cruel Winter, I think 2 episodes ago now.
I had that in my head for like a week after that. It's effective stuff.
Yeah, it was really good, and I thought, wow, it can't get better than this, but it turns out it can and did. So I want to play some examples of Udio. I've got some from our community on Discord, and I've also got some of them on the Udio website, which I'll bring up on the screen now for those that watch. So I'll play a few different examples for everyone to listen to. And
finally, being an audio medium pays off.
Yeah,
as a podcast.
It's going to work out well for those listening, whether they're mowing the lawn or driving to and from work today for you.
Yeah, I think the people commuting to work on like a cold and frosty morning, this is going to warm you up.
All right, so let's first of all listen to some of the sort of top tracks on Udio right now. This is a country one.
I tell you fellas, I've been caught out doing something I really shouldn't.
It's pretty good. I don't think that if someone played that to
I
me,
wanted to hear the next bit because I
think...
assumed it was something messed up.
Yeah, hence why I stopped it. Here's a rock song about procrastinating.
Laying it. I'm just laying it. I wake up late again, hit snooze to start. I might seem grown up, but I'm slacking at heart.
Sounds like we're zooming into like the start of American Pie or one of those movies or something.
Yeah, pretty good though, right? Like if I play that to you, you would think it's just one of those kind of tracks. There's really no indication. There's something about Udio. It has this like essence where it feels really human, whereas Suno, you could always sort of tell underlying that it was AI. Here's something really interesting, a different style of music. You might, if you're a Simpsons fan, remember the B Sharps from The Simpsons. It was like their group that they got together. What do they call it? An acapella? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and so this is Baby on Board, but done as if it was like fully real.
Baby on board, how I've adored that sign on my car's window pane. The bounce in my step, loaded with pep, 'cause I'm driving in the carpool lane. Call me a square, friend, I don't care.
So pretty good as well, right? Like, this is great stuff. And then on our community, I think it was Drinko linked to this song. It's called Echoes of Sitskevo.
Drinko's going to get fired from his job. He's just spending all day making music now.
So this is called Echoes of Sitskeva, and based on obviously Ilya Sitskeva from OpenAI, as in like, where is he? So listen to this.
Vanished in the dark. Gone without a trace.
But he shouldn't his pants at work.
What secrets held deep in your view?
So again, like crazy. And this is the lyrics of Vanished in the Dark, Gone Without a Trace, No Sparks, What Secrets Held Deep in Your View, Sitskeva, What Did You Pursue? It's really good. Like, I would listen to this song in the background while I worked and think it was sort of like, you know those random playlists on Spotify that you listen to and you just sort of have it playing in the background while you work? Udio this week, I've just been literally using since it came out, just playing these songs in the background. And you almost forget that it's AI generated after a while.
I mean,
It's
there's
that
so many valid use cases for this, like elevator music, gym music, like places that need to play music all day and want something unique that they don't have to pay as much for. Not to mention content creators who don't want copyright strikes can just generate realistic sounding music for everything now. It's so convincing.
Yeah, but I feel like it could also chart as well. And, people can. There's this idea of just, personalized music. And one of the early investors in Udio, and of course it is very early, you've got Andreas and Horowitz were one of the people who funded it. And then the other backer is the current CTO of Instagram. And he came out around the time that Udio came out and said that it's very reminiscent to him of Instagram in the fact that, people, when they got phones and higher quality cameras, started taking these sort of artsy photos of their like breakfast food and then applying filters to it and sharing these like really strong creations. It basically made everyone a better photographer, and then people started sharing images, and now it's descended into pure chaos. But at the time, it really built this social network around being able to create better imagery. And I feel like Udio has this opportunity, which he identified, to create some sort of like, ability for everyone to create custom music, share it. And then
it's a really exciting lens to look through it. It's like, it's a creative medium, it's expressive, and now you have the ability, even if you have no actual music talent, to create something that represents what you want to get out there.
And it's crazy to me to think, like, instead of maybe Taylor Swift headlining the Billboard charts, could an Udio song eventually, or a song created by AI music, just be the number one music that people listen to? And it somewhat disrupts artists in the sense that for a while, maybe people are like, oh, the AI music's just like way better for me. And then maybe like the human curated made content makes a comeback as sort of like this vintage S music eventually in the future.
Yeah, definitely this gives me the impression that there's a hell of a lot of competition coming in the music industry. Like, it's going to be hard to compete with this if they can make full songs of this quality.
But what are the true lols? And you haven't actually heard any of this before the show, so I'm interested to get your reaction. Is that I found on X, someone posted some examples from Udio of very customized music. So this is ABC Den. I'll link to this in the show notes. I found an account on Udio that is mostly generating songs about how his friend Seth shit his pants at work. And let me play you some of these.
He's got more than one about that?
There's 3 hit tracks. Let's listen to them.
Okay.
Seth shit his pants at Gladstone's. He was a grown man who pooped in his pants. And Dave had to drive him home.
Okay, and then it gets better.
Oh, Seth, why'd you have to go and shit in those pants? Can't believe you were gonna take me to the dance with all that nasty poop in your pants.
So then
That's the best one.
Oh wait, there's one more. I think this.
Oh, they need to have like an American Idol of this stuff, like where they're judging songs. Like, this would be so much fun.
Oh.
He was a grown man who pooped in his pants, and Dave had to drive him home.
Honestly,
I like how it says grown man, like it's fine for children to shit their pants.
What a time we live in. What a time. Like, I mean, you can literally, just think about how good the technology is. You can take some silly, stupid joke or something that happened in your life and create like literal, the highest quality audio from a different era sung by multiple people about
like the different genres are great because the concept of something like having a choir sing your ridiculous lyrics, like, unless you're an eccentric billionaire and they never have any fun, you couldn't really afford to pay a choir to sing your weird stuff, right? So like being able to do that is just unbelievable.
And what does it do to creation? It just completely is disinflationary on terms of creating music and eventually video and all these things. Like, it just makes it so accessible.
I always judge these these technologies by whether I want to immediately cancel the podcast and just go play with them all, play with them all day. And I've got Udio open in the background. I'm like, I can't wait for this to be over so I can go make some
Yeah,
songs.
I just need to spend more time on this. But you know,
also, Mike, before you go on, minor point of order. Before the podcast, you told me don't swear so much on the podcast. Then you did a whole segment on shitting the bed.
well, I get really annoyed when I'm listening to podcasts and they swear and I'm driving with the kids in the car and I'm like, man, can you at least warn me? And I feel like last week I don't know why, we just let rip. So, but yeah, I guess now I violated my own rule.
We'll keep it confined to this segment.
But I'm just keeping in the sort of flow of the podcast, which is we completely contradict ourselves throughout the episode. So
that's true. Lacking integrity is one of our main skills.
So what really caught my attention though on this post about Seth, let me fix this for you, his pants, was that someone commented below this Maynard, does this dude have a record deal yet? As a joke, but it really got me thinking, could an AI artist or an AI song that we write get a record deal? And so what I did was I found one of the top songs on Udio, and I really wanted something fairly realistic that a record label might actually consider signing. And this is the track that stood out to me. Let me play it to you now.
Changing, shifting, it only stings sometimes. I lead to the changes and grow. I lead to the changes and grow.
Okay, so this
is being generated by a computer. It's astonishing.
Yeah, honestly, like there's some, times I read those like Gary Marcus negative tweets and it's like, oh, it's all over, folks. Like we've hit a plateau, and then Udio comes out, and you're like, it's truly insane, and it warrants that kind of usage of language. But yeah, anyway, this song's called Adrenaline Rush. It's by a username Conor on Udio, and I had this idea of what if I went and researched record labels that signed these kinds of artists, this sort of electro dance genre, which is quite popular right now. And so I found a bunch of pretty high quality labels in Australia, Sony Music Australia, Big Machine Records, like a number of record labels in Australia that have signed some really notable acts and some international acts as well that people right across the world would know. And so I sent them an email trying to get Conor, the username Conor, on Udio signed to a real record.
I just figured
label.
You made up like a name that would be fitting of that kind of singer. I didn't realize you just took the guy's username.
Yeah, I'm not that creative. Cool. So I said and I sent this email to a bunch of record labels. I said, hey, insert the name of the person I was targeting at the record label. I co-host a top 50 Australian podcast, bit of a flex, and we recently featured Conor's music. We just did, so it's not a lie. After speaking with Conor, he is talking to a label about an EP release. Now, that is a total lie, but I needed some bait to get them to reply.
Everyone exaggerates a little in these things.
He has a track called Adrenaline Rush, preview attached, and several more he has literally written, produced from his computer. Not a lie.
That's 100% true.
100% true.
In less than 10 minutes.
He is a complete unknown. He really is.
Yeah.
But I think you will agree, if you listen to the track, has huge potential.
I'd love to see you get cross-examined in court about this. That would be so good.
I definitely
see if you could get it through.
I definitely win the case. He is, so he's a complete unknown, has huge potential. Would you guys be interested in speaking with Conor? I don't know what I was thinking with this. I'm trying to help Conor with some good introductions, Mike, and then I attach the track. Now, honestly, I told you
Which email did you use?
I used my my hey.com email because I thought it was kind of like a bit a bit like random. And so anyway, I sent all these emails off. I told you at the time I was doing it, and I thought there was zero chance we would get any replies. But it turns out the record labels love Conor. So let me read you one of the replies I got. I've blanked everything out up on the screen now, so I don't want to humiliate or embarrass any of these people. So I got a reply pretty much immediately after from one of the labels, and this is a big record label in Australia. I'm not going to say which name, but it's a major label. Yes, this is decent, Michael. Thanks for thinking of us. Can you please introduce us?
Oh.
So like, at this point, I felt like I'd gone way too far, and I was like, oh, this prank got out of hand fast, because I don't even know how to reply. I still haven't replied.
Yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad for them now.
Yeah, I feel like a lying piece of...
They're like, I've finally hit the jackpot in terms of signing someone.
Yeah, and so I don't even know where to go from here. I'm thinking what I might do is...
You've got to keep going. You've got to... I don't know how you're going to arrange a meeting. Do a virtual meeting, and then we could use... I don't know.
Well, I thought we could give them a number, and we could use our phone calling technology to be Conor the AI. So anyway, we'll check back in on this saga soon. I think the conclusion of this might be we might ask one of these people from a record label to come on the show, if they will, and talk about what implications they think might occur from something like Udio.
That's a better idea. Just tell him the truth. Hey, this was made by AI. How does that make you feel?
But full credit to the team at Udio, because it turns out you've built an AI system so good that a record label is interested. And
it's like the Turing test of music.
Yeah, so AGI achieved. Now, I did take it even further than just trying to get them signed on a record label. So in Australia, we have this radio station called Triple J. They help spread a communist message globally. No, sorry. I mean, they help up-and-coming artists, I meant to say. So Triple J is a great station. I listened to it through, before Spotify even existed. And it's how you would discover new music. And they do help support up-and-coming artists. They have this website called Triple J Unearthed, where artists can list their profile and upload some tracks, and then people can listen to them. They talk about that music, and then eventually it might get featured on the radio station, or you can actually win what's called Triple J Unearthed, and the best track wins, and it gets a lot of attention. So a lot of local Australian artists will list on there. So I thought, what if we listed Conor? So I came up with some album art. I listed him in the electronic dance category. I put my location, Newcastle in New South Wales, as the sort of independent location. And of course, I listed the track. Now, unfortunately, at the time of recording this, the track hasn't been approved yet. Look, I'm sure it will be.
Yeah, I don't see why it possibly wouldn't be.
Yeah, and so once it's approved on Triple J Unearthed, I was thinking we, as a This Day in AI community, and all of our listeners out there, might, if you're interested, go and listen to the track and upvote it and give it a bit of attention to see if maybe AI could win Triple J's Unearthed competition. So
I just realized, Mike, this is another merch opportunity. Let's make Conor t-shirts.
Yeah, I like that idea. I'm going to do that. Great suggestion.
I'd wear that. And then if anyone wants to hear about him, be like, oh, he's the hottest new artist. He's up and coming. You got to get in now.
So yeah, so that is the Conor saga. Well, I'll report back in next week and over the following weeks how Conor is doing. But I just wanted to say to the artist on Udio, Conor, congratulations. All right, so moving on. So it was a big week in terms of large language model releases, and it all happened on one day, surprise, surprise, as everyone tried to yet again trump each other. It started out with the event Google Cloud Next, which is their annual cloud conference where they give pathetic demos about how to use their products that no one asked for. It started at 11 a.m. with the introduction of Google Gemini Pro 1.5 finally hitting general availability. We've had access to that model for quite a while now. It's been on SimTheory, I think, 1 or 2 weeks now. It has the million token context. They call it GPT-4 class. I don't know if it is in that level, but it no longer has a wait list. They're saying it's now available in 180 countries, apart from Europe and the UK, which I believe they've said is coming fairly soon. What's interesting is we finally have clarification of the pricing. So there's a free tier in the API that allows 50 requests a day. It is rate limited to 2 requests per minute, which isn't a lot. But you can also pay $7 per million.
Wait, are those requests? Can you use the full context window in your free ones?
I think so. Yeah,
that's pretty
that's my
epic.
Understanding.
Then.
Yeah.
Like that's 50 requests when it's. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna steal your thunder here, but like if it's $21 for a million output tokens, and you can do that 50 times a day for free, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not terrible. So 7 million input, $21 per million output. So in terms of pricing, like I think to get an understanding of where this fits into the market, it's slightly less than GPT-4 Turbo. And priced a little bit higher than Claude 3 Sonnet, just to give you an understanding of where it fits in. Now, one of the biggest announcements, and we'll dig into it a little bit more in a moment, was that Gemini Pro now supports audio inputs and also system prompts. But then, not to be outdone, and this is typical OpenAI fashion, at 11:44 a.m., so literally 43 minutes after this was announced by Google, this is all Pacific time, OpenAI finally announced GPT-4 Turbo out of preview and also said they've integrated the vision capability into GPT-4. Previously, it was two separate ways of accessing it, as everyone would know and recall most likely. And it also now supports function calling and JSON output. And I'm interested to sort of hear from you what that might mean. And then in the evening, and we'll go through all of these in detail in a minute, Mistral tweeted in true Mistral fashion a link to a BitTorrent of a open source model, a new open source model called Mixtral 8 times 22 billion parameters. So you had OpenAI trying to trump Google Gemini Pro 1.5 in their Google Cloud Next event, and then you had Mistral trying to trump that all in one day. So it was a lot to make sense of and a lot to take in a single day. And I'm sure if you're subscribed to thisdayinai.com, our mailing list, you got slammed on one day with all of those announcements. So Chris, I thought we'd touch on Google Gemini 1.5 first. Now we've obviously used it quite a bit. The big updates being the native audio understanding, the system instructions, and the JSON mode. Do you think this is just catch up and they've finally released a capable model, or what do you make of the announcement?
I think the model's pretty good, and I think it was quite difficult to get access. And I know just speaking with people in our community, not everyone did. So I think generally people being able to access it directly is a great thing, and we'll hear more about it in the coming weeks. I find it to be quite a capable model. I haven't really had any issues with it, but I also find that its main advantage being its large context window. I just am really struggling to find cases where you need like 1 million tokens. And I love the idea and I don't want it to be taken away. But at the same time, even when I'm pushing things in stuff that I'm working on, it's rare that I go over 200,000 tokens. And like, I know I'm an N of 1 and like, I'm not the best use case, but I feel like the advantage of these larger context windows does seem to be on things like understanding videos, understanding large amounts of audios without having to transcribe them first. And I feel like I need to try more of that before I can get a true understanding of the power of it.
Yeah, one example I saw, and I haven't been able to test this out myself yet because I can't get a small enough video file that won't time out in their user interface yet, but is uploading an episode of the podcast in video form and getting it to do the indexing and chapterization of the video for YouTube, which is, it takes quite a bit of time to put the chapters in each week and figure out, what are the right sort of jump points.
Yeah,
And
and as we've discovered, it's actually quite the challenge for LLMs to do that. We've several times used different services which will turn the audio into text along with timestamps of key moments or key chapters or whatever. Like we used 11 Labs for a while and other things. But no matter
yeah,
what we did and combine it with, it just couldn't do accurate chapters.
and I think that was partially because we were taking a text translation and it wasn't aligning to video frames. But I believe from just some of the examples I've seen on X of people doing it, Gemini 1.5 Pro, with the sort of multimodality of video, is much more capable at doing this. So I do want to test it out myself. I just haven't been able to get it to actually work yet. I did also get time to test the audio out the native audio understanding. And I had sort of like a weird hit and miss experience in AI Studio, which is the interface you can try this out. I'll bring it up on the screen now. So I actually uploaded my Adrenaline Rush song, and get this. So song analysis changes by David Bowie. Like, so the hallucinations.
Yeah, they sound exactly alike.
Just the song you provided, Changes by David Bowie, is a reflection of the inevitability of change and the need to embrace it. So I uploaded that track and said, listen to the song and tell me what it's about. And it titled it Song Analysis Changes by David Bowie. And
it's like it didn't register the audio at all, and it's just picked a good song to analyze because it's in the title.
It's 100% a hallucination. And then on another attempt, which because of the history of how this thing works, it's the worst interface on the planet. So the other change was I uploaded the audio and I'm like, listen to this, and it's like, sorry, I can't listen to audio. I can't, like, all I can do is translate it and tell you about the words. So I don't know, like every time I use Gemini, every time I listen to the hype, every time I see the examples on X and I go and try this stuff myself, it either doesn't work or it hallucinates like mad.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. And like we go to models that work for our use cases. I think when people are working with AI on a day-to-day basis, you're going to gravitate towards things that will solve the problem. And I think that's my worry with Google Gemini 1.5, knowing that it's their mid-range model, is that I'm probably not going to get the best output from this. So why am I going to use it just because I can? Like, I think that's the main issue for me. Like, if I was a company that's deep into Google's ecosystem and then this became available, sure, I'll develop on it. That sounds great. But at the same time, I'm not going to go out of my way to use it because it's just not that compelling.
Yeah, and also just the accessibility. And I think this is Google's biggest problem is accessibility. So, you go to try it. It's like, is it Vertex AI? Is it AI? So you're like, what is it? Where do I find it? Oh, wait, it's not in the Gemini web interface, so I can't use it there yet. But then it's in AI Studio, so I can go play with it. It's hard to get into. The account system is a joke.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The other thing, we were discussing this morning because I was trying the new Gemini Code Assist as an alternative to Copilot, and you install it. You've got to log into a Google account. Now I've got several, so I've got to pick the one most likely not to be rejected because, as we've seen in the past, if you have a paid Google account, you're less likely to get access to the new services. Then it's like, okay, select a cloud AI project to use with this service. And I'm like, well, I want to use it with all of them. Like, I don't really want it to be restricted, but I guess they just want to attribute it on their side to something. So I have to pick some random project. And then it's like, this API is not enabled for this project. And it's just all of these steps you've got to go through. And then I left it, came back later, and it had logged me out. And I had to go through that process again just to access this thing. Whereas if you contrast to using Copilot in the first place, it was like install plugin, it just starts working. They're just so disorganized in the way they structure things. And it's just, you're right, there's that resistance there. Like if you talk about Gemini now and told me to write down on a piece of paper how to get into Gemini 1.5 and use it, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, the naming is just out of control. And you look at why, say, ChatGPT and now Claude with Opus, with their web interface, has been so successful. And it's so simple. It's like, it's really accessible and really good. And what it does well at is well known. And like that whole Apple thing, it just works. But with Google, it's like, where do I go and which model am I using? And it's a mess.
Yeah, and as we've joked about in our This Day in AI Discord many times, the naming of some of their things is just so unbelievably corporate. It's hard to understand.
They also seem to, like many of these cloud providers, be in search of problems that don't exist. And so I want to give you one of the examples from their keynote that and I'd love to hear from our audience if I'm just have truly lost my mind and this is something that they would want, but my gut instinct says no one wants this product. So let me play you an excerpt of the video that they have up on their website.
Like the keyboard player is wearing. I'd like to see.
So I'll just pause it and give you a little bit of context. So in this demo, it's a website assistant running on this fictitious fashion brand website. And there's like a chat box at the top of this website. And she wants to find the woman demoing some checkered shirt she saw in a YouTube video. And so she's typing in...
Oh, that happens to me all the time.
Yeah, it's a big problem. Find me a checkered shirt like the keyboard player is wearing. So I'll keep playing it.
Prices, where to buy it, and how soon can I be wearing it. I'm going to include the video.
So she just pastes the link in.
The customer agent is using Gemini's multimodal reasoning to analyze the text and video.
So I'll pause it there because I think people get the idea. So it's using Gemini's multimodal capabilities to analyze the text and video and then try and match it with one of the products in the store. Cool. Why on earth would anyone do... I mean, maybe someone, like how is this the main example use case? Like, what on earth?
Even if that did work, who would think to do that? Like, it's such a weird, strange, convoluted way of finding out kind of not that important information.
Yeah, and then they follow it up with, now she can call and...
I see you had a session on another
Listen
device.
to this.
I've sent you an SMS message with a link to our live chat companion. If you would like to switch to chat, please click the link. How can I help you today?
I'd like to purchase the shirt in my cart with the card I have on file.
Absolutely. I see you're also a Symbol Fashion Rewards member.
It's so
Looks like you
American,
have a-
isn't it? Just buying shit online.
But it's like, why? Why would you go from an online chat? Oh, now I'll call this agent because it's so personal. Like, it's just so... Seriously, Google, what the hell? This is the dumbest.
There's so many good industrial applications of the technology, especially with multimodal. Like my example during the week. Oh, actually, maybe I don't want to give away that idea if we're gonna.
No, don't give that away.
Yeah, but I was thinking about the idea of using, like, analyzing large amounts of video and different ways you could apply that information. I just think online shopping in some esoteric example where you want some specific shirt from some specific store, like, you've already done all the work, man. Just browse their catalog, find the shirt. Like, I don't know. That's just really, really not. You're right. Like, they're just disconnected from what people are actually going to use the tech for. Also, why are they trying to appeal to consumers? They're not the ones who are going to be implementing this technology. Like, really, they should be actually focusing on developers and how they can use this to either leverage the development process or add more features to their software that'll benefit their customers, not how does it enhance my online shopping?
Yeah, I mean, bottom line here is that what this is good at right now is replacing about 80% of support interactions that the AI can handle when grounded correctly and when programmed correctly to answer about, refund policy, returns, order updates, all that stuff. What they won't actually say is this can basically replace 80% of the work and soon probably 98% of support agents. And they just don't seem to want to say it out loud.
Yeah. But it's just they just can't get away from like chatbot, like just chatbot interface. Like, I get it. That's great. Everybody's implementing that now who hasn't already. I just think we're far beyond that now. Like these are very simple use cases, and the model they've released transcends all of that. Like you can do that with tiny open source models, what they're talking about there. It isn't really like, yeah, the multimodal thing's cool, but there's already the ability to decode videos and use the text from them. And they've had that for ages. They've had Whisper and stuff for ages. So I just don't get like they're not really demonstrating. Sorry, I know Whisper's OpenAI, but they're not really demonstrating why this model in particular goes beyond that.
What I think is interesting, if you're dreaming up the future of e-commerce with AI, I'm not thinking I want to go there and randomly chat like, show me some t-shirts. It's like, I'll just click t-shirts. It's a lot quicker than typing.
Yeah.
I think
People don't want to talk to some bot. Like it's annoying, especially if like most people do shopping on their phones and they're sitting on the couch. They're not wanting to talk to some friendly AI assistant, and especially not chat to it.
I think where it works is this, where it's essentially creating a profile of you based on purchasing habits, browsing, similar to what we're already been doing in marketing automation for years, figuring out what is this person most likely to buy next, and serving up content on a website that's just hyper personalized to them with AI and saying why it thinks you might look good or want to buy this stuff, like very predictive stuff.
Why not just cut out the middleman? Like, don't even let the customer decide. Just send them stuff.
Yeah.
Like, use my credit card on file to just send me stuff. Like, how about that?
So anyway, they announced a whole series of other things. I know you mentioned Gemini Code Assist, which I think we should mention. They announced Gemini Code Assist, Gemini Cloud Assist, which honestly is just like a chatbot where you're like, how the hell do I log into Google Cloud is probably its biggest use case.
That's good.
Gemini and security, so identifying a bunch of like security risks in the enterprise. Gemini and BigQuery, I actually thought this was one of the more interesting things, so you can get it to help you write queries. Gemini and Looker, so you can ask it questions. Looker's like an analytics tool businesses use, for those unfamiliar. So you can ask questions like, what are my top sales items? And instead of having to like create a some sort of like filter or SQL statement, it just writes it for you and presents the information and a summary of it. I thought that was really cool, provided they can guarantee it doesn't hallucinate, because you don't want to go and make key business intelligent decisions based on some hallucination. And then finally, Gemini in databases as well. So they had a bunch of like sort of cloud releases as part of that announcement. Now, you have played around with Gemini Code Assist. What did you think?
Well, so far, it feels the same as Copilot to me in terms of it's very fast. Like there's no issues at all with speed. And in a couple of like the problem is it's so anecdotal, and I've really only used it in the last say 5 hours or whatever. So it's not the best test. I'll probably know more next week. But other than the convoluted process to set up, it's certainly as good as Copilot. And I noticed in a few cases where I've had a lot of trouble with Copilot over the last probably couple of months, where it just sort of is, I guess you'd call it a refusal rate, where there's certain cases where I sort of try to get it started with the code, like I write like the first couple of letters of a piece of code that I know needs to be written. And I'm expecting it to write the whole function, but it might just say write the next line, for example, or something like that. And then I'm like, okay, I don't care. I'm just going to do it myself. Whereas so far, the Gemini one seems more apt to write the block of code for me and complete things. And also, there's been a few cases where I'm, say, working on, obviously, I work on AI prompts a bit. When I'm working on an AI prompt, the completions are working there as well. Not to say Copilot doesn't do that, it does, but I found that Gemini is doing them in a more complete way. So I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying my experience with it so far has been pretty good, and I'm going to keep using it for the next little while to see.
It'll be interesting with that larger context size of being able to, allegedly take into account more of the project in terms of returning code, if that will lead to better performance using it over time, where it does have that bigger context window. Does it cost money? How do you pay for it?
It's so unclear. I genuinely do not know what's going on. Here's my process. I opened VS Code, searched for the extension, I installed it. Out of my own, I guess, graciousness, I went and disabled Copilot first, because I was like, I don't really know how these are going to work together. It might lead to some sort of AGI singularity and like destroy the world. So I was like, I better disable it first and then enable the other one. So I did it, and then that's when I went through that story I told earlier, which is both boring and dull. So I won't repeat it, but I had to basically find a project, and I picked someone from like 10 years ago that I had in Google, and that seemed to work. So yeah, but in terms of payment, genuinely, I have no idea what the hell's going on, and time will tell.
So I wanted to
I
try
haven't
the
paid anyone
agent.
anything.
I wanted to try the agent builder because they have this agent builder, based on that e-commerce example where you can go and build agents. But typical Google, as we mentioned earlier, this is the screen I got when I tried to load it up. It says, enter billing on Google Cloud Console in text, enable billing for project, and then create billing account. And then I went to do that and it had a fatal error. So again, like I can't even try it. And I think this goes back to that accessibility problem we keep coming back to. It's like if people can't easily try this stuff when there's so many things to try and so much out there, you're going to lose mindshare. Like people aren't just going to randomly persist and be
like you need a certified Gemini 1.5 Pro Ultra consultant, Google authorized representative to help you probably.
If I was running that team, I would literally go and fire them all. Like I would just fire everyone and start again because they are truly hopeless. And this was the announcement, announcing Vertex AI Agent Builder, helping developers easily build and deploy Gen AI experiences if you can figure out how to log in.
I think if it was easy, you would have seen it all over Twitter, right? Like as much of a disappointment as GPTs were, and we kind of predicted that, people were spamming them everywhere because they thought they could make money from it, and it was obviously quite straightforward to make them. But if this was easy, you would be seeing people putting them out there.
It's so bad. It's truly so bad. And I think there's that guy out there, I think it's like Chatbase, where he allows you to build very similar chatbots to run on your website. He's absolutely crushing it. And then you look at what they come up with all this money, all this time, access to these incredible models, and it's just garbage. And I think that this...
I think it's a case, though, where we're now in an industry where a lot of it is what ideas can you come up with that best leverage the technology, and then who can deliver that in a modern app that, or whatever you call it, that really actually gives people leverage. And the thing is, traditionally, these larger companies have relied on their might and their money to go, well, building Google search is not trivial because you need farms of servers just sitting everywhere to do all the map reduce stuff. And that's not easy to compete with. You can't just build a search engine to compete with them. Whereas in this case, when it comes to the tooling that sits on top of the models, sure, I might not be able to go and train my own from scratch model, but I can get access to models, and then I can build tooling that gives people access to that in a way that really gives them leverage to build applications for their business. And I just feel like companies like Google for a long time have not built good applications. Like Gmail's good, Maps is good. A lot of their other software is acquired. They're just not great at building applications. And I feel like definitely usability and accessibility are what they're poorest at.
Yeah, I just don't see people, especially in the enterprise, and I said this to you before we started recording the show, being drawn into some ecosystem like Google's model when new models are coming out all the time. To me, you sort of want an independent interface, like one of these open LLMs to run where you can sort of try different models or chop and change, at least now, and then eventually hand out your team with some sort of global interface where they can maybe use different models and it's just not attached to one of these big companies that no one really trusts anymore. So anyway, I thought it was really underwhelming in terms of the announcements. Obviously, Gemini 1.5 Pro is super exciting in the sense of that large context. People have just got to figure out how to use it. But the hallucinations, I think, are just to the point. It's somewhat unusable right now, unless they, hone in and fix them. I also found it odd that Gemini Ultra was just not mentioned, and it's like it doesn't exist anymore. It's like it never happened, and it was just some sort of scare tactic announcement. It is on Sim Theory right now. Like you can use it and play around with it, we've got API access, but it's just like it doesn't exist anymore. It seems like they've just gone all in on Gemini 1.5 Pro.
Yeah, that is interesting. And back on your hallucination point, one thing I've been becoming increasingly worried about is as we use larger context windows, is knowing like is it actually taking all of this into account or is it just taking some of it into account and it can produce a realistic looking answer? And it's kind of hard to test for because the same base prompt with a large amount of information can give different results, obviously based on different questions you ask. But the it's just so hard to know without doing like needle in a haystack kind of testing on it if it's actually taking it all into account or not. And that's the thing, is those context windows get larger and you put these things at the center of applications, you just don't really have a guarantee that it's always going to be doing what you expect.
Yeah, they kept talking about in the presentation, and you can ground it in this, especially with those AI agents. Like you can ground it, but then you try and ground it with like an audio track or a video or some files in their own interface, and it immediately hallucinates. I mean, in the 4 examples I tried, it hallucinated every single time. So it's just, I don't know if you even can believe them. So anyway, we'll see if any of this stuff gets used. My bet is this all goes nowhere and no one really cares because there's just too much going on. But let's see how it plays out. I feel like someone like Salesforce or one of these other companies that actually understands how to do enterprise stuff, or at least sell and distribute into enterprises, is probably going to come along and take a lot of this market.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the play, is someone like Salesforce comes out with something that leverages these things that gives someone a full insight to their business. They give it some marketing name, they have people certified on it and consultants, and then that becomes like a new generation of like AI consultants at every major company out there.
Yeah, I feel like
It's
there's
gonna
going to be
be
a
everywhere.
slack of this category, whatever this is, where like people use this as like a console at work with AI.
When that happens, I quit. I officially quit the podcast, and I think we switch to like gardening or something like so, something that's less popular, and just talk about that.
Coming soon, our gardening podcast.
Yeah, maybe not gardening. Maybe I don't know. Connor music.
Yeah, or gambling, which we have talked about maybe doing a separate podcast on.
Yeah, true.
So OpenAI attempted to do classic OpenAI and trump the Google Gemini 1.5 Pro announcement at Google Cloud Next. Yes, I deserve an award for that. So they came out and said majorly improved GPT-4 turbo model available now in the API and rolling out in ChatGPT. That was all they said. Of course, they lost their key AI influencer, that Logan guy who's now at Google, shrilling their stuff. So Mira Moretti came out and said, we just released improvements to GPT-4 Turbo, but OpenAI literally did not tell us anything about what those improvements might be or why it's better or what actually happened. But what we can infer from all of this is that they have moved out of, let me bring it up on the screen now for those watching. They've moved out of the preview editions of GPT-4 Turbo. This is the first non-preview edition of GPT-4 Turbo. It's obviously cutoff date of information is December 2023. It's still that 128K token size context window. And I thought what the most exciting or interesting announcement was, similar to Claude Opus and Claude's new models, they've incorporated the Vision model into the API. So it's not 2 separate APIs now for Vision. It can also work with JSON, the Vision component of it, and do function calling. Now, can you explain to everyone what that actually means, what it might enable, and to a non-technical audience, what we're even talking about?
Okay, well, the function calling is basically you can get separate output back from the LLM that says call this function with these parameters. So you can have a reliable way to run functions in your system. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, that for me personally isn't such a big deal because I have a reliable way to do it with almost any model just by, a sort of certain prompt I use that allows that to happen. However, for a lot of people, it's really important because it means that you can essentially write a program, define all these different functions, make the LLM aware of it, and then it has the ability to just call them and get the result. And then that result is then put back into the prompt and then run again. So the model can essentially operate like a mini computer, like where it can get results of processes into itself. So the concept's good and it works really well. The JSON output is very useful because you can essentially specify, I want the output in JSON, and this has a dual effect. One, you have to write less code because so many of the models they just love to talk, and they'll put in a preamble like, here is the JSON you requested, or some crap, here's the JSON, and they'll encode it differently. Sometimes they'll do like the 3 backticks JSON like you do in Markdown, and then encode it in that. And so it's just really difficult to get reliable output that you can parse into your system. So you've got all this sort of defensive code to try and extract it. Now, I think people who've been working with LLMs for a while, like us, have code that just handles that. So I don't really worry about it so much now. I can just give it a ball of text output from an LLM and get the JSON out. I'm not worried. But if you're building new stuff and you want it guaranteed, then setting the JSON flag on the models that support it is really useful because it's guaranteed that you get it out. Now, you still have to tell it what fields you want in there. So you still need to say, hey, please include the following fields, and just hope that it honors that. It usually does, but like there is no way to specify what fields you definitely want out of it. But I find that by putting it in JSON mode, it helps focus the LLM into, okay, I understand what the output of this needs to be. And one thing I've noticed, and it affects Claude and it affects GPT-4, is if you give a whole bunch of instructions to an LLM, let's say you've got like 10 rules it needs to follow at the top, and then at the end you sort of ask a question, it's unclear as to which it's going to take the most seriously. And if you give contradictory things for it to do, it'll just pick one and do that. And so I've noticed cases where it will output something that seems really confusing, but you realized, oh, it's just placed more emphasis on this instruction here, and that's why. Whereas if you specify an output format like JSON and you give it an example of what you're expecting, then it's far more focused on that, and it knows that that is where you're trying to get to. So really the significance of these things is just about the practicality of building apps around LLMs, and it just makes it much more reliable in terms of accomplishing a specific task.
So, like many, I struggled to understand what had actually changed about the model. There was mixed reactions. This AI leaks the news said this GPT-4 turbo release seems really rushed, disorganized, no metrics, no concrete examples. What is going on at OpenAI?
And can I add a word to that? The word that comes to mind for me is pathetic. It's pathetic that these guys are frigging sitting around trying to rain on Google's parade just so they can feel like they're still number one, or whatever weird desires or emotions or whatever it is. It's just pathetic and lame, that they do that. Clearly we've seen multiple instances of them sitting on some minor announcement that they've got a landing page for and a blog post and a quote that they can just release when someone else releases something. What a really awful way to run a business. It's just childish and it's not helpful. It doesn't endear them to anyone. It doesn't make you trust them in the long term. It doesn't undo the damage with all that CEO machination crap they had recently. In my mind, it just lowers their standings, to the point where I actually felt sorry for the model GPT-4 this morning and threw some requests at it just so it didn't get lonely. I was like, I just feel sorry for this thing. It's got such ability, but the people running it have just lost their minds, and they're just kind of sad and pathetic.
Yeah, and one thing that caught my attention was this particular tweet. Is it just me, or was today the first time OpenAI was unable to overshadow a Google AI announcement? Gemini 1.5 Pro is pretty wild, blah, blah, blah. But I get the sense that it's not just you saying this, it's this overall feeling of it's obvious their tactic now. It's oh, let's trump this announcement. Instead of just making it stand on its own legs and saying hey, we've improved the best model. It's now much better at coding and giving us some detail and
Yeah,
all.
or we've addressed your feedback. It's not as lazy as it was, which sounds like that's one of the things they've done. And very anecdotally, but in a couple of requests I did, my sympathy requests this morning, it actually did give pretty good answers, I thought. So, and to the point where I wasn't even really using GPT-4 Turbo much because I was just not happy with the responses. And I've just recently started to use it again. So I don't know. Like, I feel like them just saying, hey, we've listened to the community. You said this, we've done this. Like, a couple of incremental announcements like that would go down well. I feel like every other AI community I'm involved in, like, if you look at things like Grok, Midjourney, some of the phone calling ones, like Retail, and I forget what the other one's called, but they're constantly they're constantly producing minor updates. And Mistral's similar, actually, like, where it's like, here's an update. We've done the following things. We've addressed this feedback. We've got this. This is now open source. This is whatever. Whereas OpenAI doesn't really do that. Like, they're trying to get the media cycle going rather than actually respond to the people who are paying them to use their stuff.
Yeah, it's just hard to take them seriously as a vendor, especially if you're in the enterprise. Like, why, like a company that's sort of secretly announcing things? Like, I don't know. It like, it's just making, honestly, Anthropic look like the adults in the room every day. And quite frankly, I switched to Opus or through the Claude interface, and I'm using it on SimTheory as my primary model for a lot of things now. And
Yeah, me too.
it's far
I really
superior.
like it. And not only that, like, because I think I said something similar last week, and it's true of this week. Like, Opus is my go-to for everything. However, I did mention this to someone in the This Day in AI community, and they actually said, "Have you tried Sonnet though? Because it's really good as well." And my answer was, I always just use whatever the max mode is. But it's interesting that the feedback on Sonnet seems pretty good as well.
Yeah, I think they're great models. And, you can benchmark however you want to benchmark. I'm just speaking of my own personal experience, but I just find Claude better to work with right now running Opus. I think it's just better than ChatGPT for nearly everything I can find, to the point I prefer the interface. I prefer its chat style. I like how I don't have to push it and say my grandma's dying to get, like, better results out of it.
Speaking of that, I had the funniest interaction with a member of our community. They had an issue with Sim Theory, and we worked on it and fixed it together. And I assume it's a he, was asking about an API for Sim Theory, and I said, "Oh, like, look, we'll consider it, and we probably will." But he said that his grandmother's life depends on it. So I'm like, "All right, I'll definitely do it now." It works on me too.
Since you're an LLM.
Yeah.
So that final announcement, which happened in the evening, was probably the funniest of all. Mistral AI on X published a torrent magnet for a new model, and that's really all we got. And then they wrote release 0535902, whatever the release code is, and then after it, lol. And that's literally how they, speaking of adults in the room, released their latest open source model. But I feel like they can get away with it because it's been their style from day one.
I love their style. I wish they'd release like a CD-ROM version, or like floppy disks, like, a 1,000 disc series where you load one at a time.
But yeah, I like, honestly, I think that was hilarious, and they're allowed to get away with it because they kind of started that thing. And their API based models and the models that people are relying on, that whole setup's very professional. But the open source stuff, it's just like, we're going to get on this bandwagon of releases to lol. Brilliant from them. It is available on Perplexity Labs, this Mixtral 8 times 22 billion parameter. It's obviously a mixture of experts model. People don't really know a lot about the model just yet. I played around with it on Perplexity, and I'm not entirely sure if it's like their system prompt or their implementation of it. But I don't know. I wasn't that impressed. It just feels like a run-of-the-mill model. I didn't test it for a terribly long period of time, but it just left me with this sort of feeling of like, what's the point? Like, what is actually the point?
I'm installing it on my Mac. So it'll be interesting to see it running locally. It's a quantized version to 4-bit, I think, but I'll be interested to see how fast it is. But again, I just there's so many different models to try, and my inclination is always like, how far can I push it? And if one's known to be not as good, it takes a lot more energy to go and try it. And honestly, if it wasn't for the podcast, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, like if you're just trying to get stuff done, or you like, you're coding and you're trying to get something out, or you're an entrepreneur about to launch something and you're using AI in it, like you're honestly just going to go to like the best model, try and craft the best prompt, and then maybe in a couple of years when things are, more established, you might try and drive that cost down by having maybe a fine tune. But even then, with these larger context sizes, it's probably just better prompting is going to get you the outcome you need. So I'm not going like negative on open source. I'm a huge believer in it, and I long for the day of like a Opus level model, not GPT-4, Opus level model running locally on my computer offline as an assistant would be phenomenal. Like that would be, out of this world good. But I'm just not sure at the moment, when the price war's going on with the closed models. Well,
I think you'd have to argue though that the mere existence of the open source models is what has driven the prices down and forced more competitiveness on the closed source models. If it wasn't for Llama 2 having been released and possibly the open source Mixtral stuff, I just don't think there would have been the same drive by the larger companies. I mean, they're competing with each other, obviously, but I think the fact that there's such good stuff that people can run themselves just generally made more interest in the area.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely put pressure on everyone, and I think they are somewhat catching up. But I think for the models that you're trying to use to catch up, the problem with them is you just don't have the hardware to even play around with them.
Yeah, it's expensive to try, and that's the problem. You you okay?
Oh, I'm just like fixing my camera. Everything that could have gone wrong in terms of production this episode has.
Ask the guy mowing outside to come in and give his comments.
We had to stop.
Did you know that AI is just going to replace you eventually? Like mowing a lawn isn't that difficult, mate.
That's probably what we'll be doing soon.
Yeah. But yeah, like I totally forget what I was talking about.
Open source and the future of everything.
Yeah.
So we are kind of running out of time here, but anyway, there's a lot to explore out of these releases. We need to get a better understanding of GPT-4 Turbo, see if Gemini 1.5 will stop hallucinating and if people actually can access it to try it out. And with this latest Mistral model and the mixture of experts approach, how good is it? Is it worth using? We'll definitely play around with it and report back. The final thing I just wanted to quickly cover was the Humane AI pin was officially released, at least in the form of many reviews of online influencers. And the reviews are not great, kind of as expected. A lot of the reviewers are just saying it's slow, it overheats, and
plain. It must be so brutal releasing. Like if you release bad software, you can fix it. But if you release bad hardware, you just be like, oh, damn. Like, oh, we screwed up. Now we have to suffer forever.
Yeah, and then all these people that pre-ordered it are getting it delivered. They expect you to pay $699 USD for the hardware, then $24 a month for basically like a phone plan that's attached to them in order to access the AI. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people will watch the videos out there and the video reviews on it, but the reviews are not great. And I'm definitely not against products like this. Like as on last week's episode, I did buy the Meta Ray-Ban AI glasses or whatever they're called. Unfortunately, you can't use it yet in Australia, which sort of defeated the purpose. But I do love this idea of this omnipresent AI. So it's sort of sad to see things like this not working. Maybe future iterations will get better, but at the same time, I mean, I think anyone could have predicted what would happen.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm no Apple fanboy, but surely Apple's the company who's going to get this thing right first.
Yeah,
like Everyone else will have a crack. Microsoft will release the Zune of those devices. Google will have something that you can only get if you're elite, and then eventually it'll just be in like stores for $4, and Apple will nail it and do something good, I reckon.
Just listen to The Verge, though. The good, well-made device. Photos look pretty good. Much easier to access than your phone. It's like, no, it's literally attached to you. The bad just doesn't work half the time. Really slow even when it does work. Missing way too many basic things. Like,
excuse my ignorance, but like, does it talk into your headphones or does it just talk out loud?
it talks out loud. You can connect it to headphones, and you've also
But I
got
mean, like,
that.
how could you realistically use that unless you're like home alone? Like, you can't go out in society and be like chatting to a thing like that's on your chest.
Well, this is
right?
the thing. They have this projector interface where you put out your hand and it'll like write on your hand and you can read it, which is pretty cool. But the thing is, it doesn't work in highlight
That's
situations.
got to be the most unnecessary feature I've ever heard. Like, what? Oh, if you put it in graffiti mode, it'll spray paint what it wants to think on the wall for you. Like,
Yeah, I
what?
mean, it's a pretty cool interface on your hand. Like, you can move through it. It sort of looks very futuristic, but it seems like a sort of demo product for a movie they're filming as a prop, as opposed to like a real consumer device that that would be useful.
Why the hell doesn't someone just hack like a Google Home or the Amazon one to just do all this and like sit it on your desk? Like, that seems like the most obvious one to me.
I
It's the
think
only
that
thing
no,
I've
I
wanted.
think you're wrong. I think it's just an Apple Watch or a smartwatch with this baked in. It's like then it's like strapped to you. You're like handcuffed to your AI.
Yeah.
It's probably the right platform, but anyway.
Handcuffed to AI or directly into your brain. One of those will do.
All right, that'll do us for today. We will report back on Conor, our artist that we are trying to get a record deal for, and see how far we can take it and where that leads to. Once Conor's listed on Triple J Unearthed, if you'd like to vote for Conor's music, the guys worked really hard on these tracks, then please do. Please help us raise Conor to the top of the charts. Chris, any final thoughts? Pretty busy week overall.
Yeah, it's exciting to have some news again. Like, it's really good. I wanna try some more.
Definitely help.
Try some more of these things. Probably the only final thought that I didn't get to was one thing we don't do in sim theory that is available in almost all of the models that support vision now is right now the vision in sim theory takes the image. The LLM will ask it a question on behalf of the other LLM, and then the answer to that question is fed into the original LLM to answer the original question. So obviously that there's a lot of lost in translation style stuff there, and it's not the ideal way to do it. The new models support directly querying the image along with the other prompting. So therefore, the models that support vision directly are capable of much more on that front. And that's something I'd like to fix and I'd like to try, because I really feel like it's far superior to have all of the context taken as a whole, not this sort of disjointed step-by-step process. So I think that is a big advancement of GPT-4, like that came out this week. And it's something that already existed in Anthropic and in Google. So yeah, I want to get onto that and just see what kind of results we get from that combined multimodal mode.
Yeah, if it's far superior or not.
Yeah.
All right. If you like the show, please consider leaving a review. And some of these companies may consider, if we don't trash talk them too much, giving us earlier access to things. In the reviews, if you can leave things like, I make all of my purchasing decisions based on listening to these two idiots, that would actually help us when we approach companies trying to get early access to things to play around.
Yeah, that's right. Good idea. Leave the reviews. It's like, these guys influence me in all the right ways when it comes to AI.
Yeah, so we would appreciate it if you have the time. Also, if you want to try out Sim Theory, simtheory.ai. And also, if you want to sign up to the news, the AI news, this day in AI.com, you can sign up there. It's been fun, Chris. Hopefully, Conor is a huge hit. We'll see you guys
It's
next
great
week.
music.